autopsies. They look at the tumors that the surgeons take out. They are in charge of the hospital laboratories. Within the field of pathology, there are several subspecialties that you can go into, one of which is forensic pathology. So for that subspecialty, you get additional training in recognizing basically how to recognize diseases that kill you, how they kill you, and also looking at things like recognizing trauma and poisons and drugs.
And so you've been a forensic pathologist, you said, for 8 years?
So, yeah, so I finished my fellowship, and then I came here, and I've been here almost 8 years practicing.
Okay, and essentially the tool that you use is otherwise known as an autopsy?
That is, that is one of our main medical procedures that we do, is the autopsy.
And how many autopsies have you conducted in your career?
Almost 2,500.
And have you been asked to render an opinion as to cause of death and manner of death in your autopsies?
I have.
And do you generate a report at the conclusion of that indicating your findings?
I do.
And have you been accepted as an expert in the field of forensic pathologist in the courts here in Tennessee?
I have.
At this time, Judge, we will tender him as an expert in forensic pathology.
No, Your Honor, absolutely not. The court will recognize Dr. Lockmiller as an expert in the field of forensic pathology.
May I approach? Dr. Lockmiller, I'm handing what's marked for identification Exhibit 331. Do you recognize that exhibit?
So what I've been handed is a copy of my final autopsy report. In addition to that, there is a copy of the toxicology report that was generated by NS Labs.
Okay, and what's the purpose of doing a toxicology report?
It is to see if there was any alcohol or illicit drugs or prescription medications in the decedent's body.
Okay, and this written report is the conclusion of your autopsy and all of your findings with regard to the cause and manner of death of Emma Walker?
So basically, I take all of the physical findings from the autopsy that I do, and then I look at the circumstances of what happened to the decedent. And then I also take any additional laboratory tests that we do, like toxicology, and put it all together and put that in the final autopsy report.
Okay, we moved that in as final autopsy report of Dr. Lockmiller, number 331.
Let it be received.
Dr. Lockmiller, I'm handing you a series of 5 photographs. As part of the process in the autopsy, do you document the autopsy as you go along in terms of documenting injuries with the camera?
Yes, so anything that is important to the case gets photographed. So we take photographs of the decedent as is, then we clean the body, and during the examination we'll do overall photographs, and if there's injury we'll take additional photographs of that injury, or if there's natural disease, something that is related to the cause of death, we'll generally have a photograph.
Okay, and what I'm handing you is one mark for identification, Exhibit 332 through 336. If you could just take a look at those 4 photographs.
There's 5 here.
5, I'm sorry.
That's right. So these are all prints of photographs that were taken during the autopsy of Emma Walker.
And this is, of course, not the total set of all photographs, it's just a subset of those?
That is correct.
Okay, so it is 332, 333, 334, 335, and 336. 5 exhibits. We'll move these in as photographs taken by Dr. Lockmiller during the autopsy.
Let them be received.
Dr. Lockmiller, do you have a copy of your report with you?
I do.
Doctor, you did say that you have been asked to tender an opinion about cause and manner of death. Could you just explain to the jury the difference between cause of death and manner of death and the opinions that you have?
So the cause of death is why you're dead. So in this case, we're going to talk about there's a gunshot wound to the head. That would be the cause of death. The manner is a determination as to the circumstances surrounding the cause of death, and they include natural, accident, suicide, homicide, and undetermined.
Okay. And go ahead and, using your report, tell the members of the jury what you've observed and what you found in your autopsy of Emma Jane Walker.
Just regarding the cause and manner, or
just tell us, if you want to go through what injuries you observed, how you conducted the autopsy, and how you made the determinations that you made.
So, as I mentioned before, well, I'll back up. So, a sudden or violent or suspicious death will be reported to our office if that individual has not been taken to a hospital and they're still at the scene. Then one of our medical legal death investigators will go to the scene. They will collaborate with law enforcement to understand the circumstances, photograph the scene. They write up a report that is given to the pathologist who's going to do the autopsy the next day. We read that information, review it, look at the photographs before we start, so we have an idea as to what the cause of death may be. And so in this case, we had a teenager female who had a apparent gunshot wound to the head in her own residence. And so when the body comes in, the body is x-rayed, it's photographed as is. Then the clothing is removed, the body is cleaned to get better detail of any injuries or natural disease that's present. In this case, there was an entrance gunshot wound on the left side of the head, just above the left ear. There was no clear exit, so it was just an entrance. After that has been photographed, then we move to opening the body, looking for natural disease, looking for the extent of the injury, looking for any evidence that needs to be packaged and given to law enforcement. And in this case, there was a bullet recovered from the head. In addition to that, there was a small plug of, it looked like a synthetic fiber material that was in the head as well that had been carried in with the bullet. So the bullet had passed through some other object that had this filling and it carried it into her head. There was severe injury to the brain and a fractured skull related to this gunshot wound. No other significant injuries, no other significant natural disease was present. Specimens were taken for toxicology and sent to NMS labs, which was negative for any alcohol or illicit drugs, which would include cocaine, the painkillers, downers, etc. So no drugs or alcohol on board. Okay, and you described the penetrating gunshot wound as also a skull fracture. Was that independent from the entry wound? No, so when the bullet entered the head, it fractured the skull and passed through the brain, causing injury to the brain. And that would be the mechanism of why she's dead, is that her brain was injured from the bullet. Okay, and her death was instantaneous? I'm not going to say it was instantaneous, but whether she had any consciousness is, I doubt that, because from the scene, it doesn't look that she didn't get up and move around, she didn't get out of bed, she didn't try to go get help. So it's probably unconscious on impact of the bullet, and but I can't say how long it took. It could have been minutes or it could have been a few hours. For her to die? Yes. And doctor, you did document the injuries. Judge, we're about to show photos of Emma, and she is a juvenile, so
yes,
we'd request that.
Camera people are ordered to take, either record, take, or transmit any images of the victim's body.
What we're viewing now are the photographs, doctor. Exhibit 332. Do you have a laser, doctor?
Let's see one more.
Go ahead and explain to us what we're doing here.
So what you're looking at is an orienting photograph of the entrance gunshot wound on the left side of Emma's head. So as I mentioned before, there is a defect here just above the left ear. This is the entrance gunshot wound. What is the unique about this wound, there's a couple of things that indicate what happened with this gunshot, is the fact that this wound here is long, so it's oblong, and the fact that there is an abraded contusion around it indicates that the bullet passed through something before the bullet struck her head. So there's an intermediary target between the muzzle of the gun and her head.
333.
This is a close-up of the same wound that we mentioned before. Again, we have this. So when the bullets don't pass through something else, the tip of the bullet will impact the body, and it will usually cause a round or oval punched-out hole wherever it strikes. And you can see this wound, this defect is not oval, it's not round, it's more long, irregular looking, and as I mentioned before, what that indicates is that the bullet passed through something and it's either been deformed by that intermediary target and or it has begun to yaw and pitch, so that the bullet, instead of just rotating and striking with the tip, the bullet has begun to turn and strikes the body. Instead of with the tip, it strikes the body with the longer portion of the bullet, and will cause this more unusual, atypical entrance. And then the fact that you have this scraped skin, bruised skin around it means that something was in contact with the head, that when the bullet passed through it caused that intermediary target to slap into the skin where the bullet enters and causes the skin to get scraped and bruised. And so there's, as I mentioned before, there's a couple indications with this, just this gunshot wound, that there was something between the muzzle of the gun and her head.
334.
This is a photograph of the plug of synthetic fibrous material that was removed from the head, and this is another indication that the bullet passed through something before it actually struck her head. So this is fabric that was pulled in with the bullet and recovered from the head.
And where was it actually recovered inside her head?
So as you saw from the picture, the bullet enters the left side of the head, just above the left ear. It attempted to exit the right side of the back of the head. It didn't have enough energy to do that, so it struck the skull and actually bounced back into the brain itself. And so this plug of material was sitting in the head, right at the point of where the bullet had attempted to exit but couldn't. So it's just right under the skull.
335.
This is a orienting photograph of the bullet that was removed from the head.
Finally, 336.
And this is a close-up of the same bullet. As I mentioned before, this bullet passed through something before it struck her, and you can see it's a jacketed bullet that has some degree of damage to it, where the jacket has been torn off the tip of the bullet here.
And doctor, you did say that the toxicology test resulted in negative results for any kind of
So
substances.
the blood that we sent to the toxicology lab was negative for alcohol and for the street drugs, the painkillers, the stimulants, the downers.
And so you formed an opinion about what her cause of death was?
It's a gunshot wound to the head.
And what is her manner of death, sir?
It's a homicide.
That's what it was.
Cross-examination.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Dr. Lockmuir.
Good morning.
Just a couple of questions. You said that you had your investigators go, part of the process is your investigators go out to the scene and they sort of see what's going on and they make a report and report that back to the person performing the autopsy.
Correct.
And was it the information you got from, who was that investigator in this case? You were
I think it was Alex Bordorn.
Okay. And is it from that information that you had you said that she didn't have consciousness? Is it from that information you said that she didn't have consciousness when she was struck?
So it's based on the information given to me and the scene photographs. What appears to be is that she's in bed when struck by the bullet and doesn't appear to be any attempt to get out. She's still in the bed. So if you presume that someone's hurt, needs help, you're going to try to go get it. So I'm making the presumption that because she's in bed where she was struck, that the likelihood is that there was no consciousness once the bullet hit her head, she was out.
Okay. And is that what you're saying when you say didn't get up and move around, didn't get out of bed, those kinds of things? Is that what you're basing that?
There's no indication from the scene that she got out of bed and got back into the bed.
Right. Okay. And I think your testimony is that she could have expired within a few seconds or within a few hours of.
So the bullet goes to the brainstem, which would be basically instantaneous death. That would destroy the centers of your brain that control your breathing and also affect your heart. And so I can't say whether it was seconds, minutes, or hours. She was, the best we can say is from the time that is thought that the firearm was discharged to the time she's found, that would be the longest she would be alive.
And she was pronounced dead, I think, at 7:11 that morning. Officially, your report provides that she was officially pronounced dead.
So, which doesn't say when she died, it's actually just when she's officially pronounced dead.
Okay. And I think your report also references a 3:45 a.m. Is that correct?
So we were given that a neighbor heard a gun discharged at that time, so that is believed to possibly be the time when it occurred.
Okay. Have you talked at all with the Emma Walker family?
I have not.
Okay. Miss Jill Walker made reference that she had went into the bedroom and found her daughter and then left and then went back into the bedroom to see if there was anything else she could do. Was there anything that Miss Walker could have done for her daughter when she found her that morning at 6:15 a.m.?
You call 911.
Okay.
That's it. I mean, this is, it's obviously a fatal head injury. I mean, from that gunshot wound, whether you got to the hospital as soon as this happened or survived, we won't know. Because it didn't happen. But it's, all she's going to be able to do is call 911.
But if she had described finding her daughter cold at about 6:15 that morning, there was nothing for her to do at that. There was nothing she could have done to save or help her daughter at that point.
If you're going to presume that her being cold, meaning that she was dead at that point, if she's dead, she's dead. You can't do that.
Right. Okay. And just briefly, how much formal education do you have, including undergrad and everything your education?
What's the question?
How much formal education do you have past high school?
Okay, so 4 years of undergraduate, then 4 years of medical school. I did 2 years of general surgery training, followed by 4 years of pathology training, and then a year of forensic pathology fellowship.
For about 15 years.
Yeah.
And then you've been doing forensic pathology for how long?
So I've been practicing here for almost 8 years. My start date here, I believe, was July the 7th of 2010.
Thank Dr. Hoffman.
Anything over your,
No, no.
you can step in and take.
Terry Wilson.
Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give in the hearing of this call will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Sir, go ahead and state your full name for the record if you would.
Terry Wilshire,
And where are you employed?
Knox County Sheriff's Office.
In what capacity?
I'm a captain facility commander at the Roger D. Wilson Detention Facility.
Okay, and as Captain Commander of the Roger D. Wilson facility, do you keep records on inmate communications there at the facility?
I do.
In what form?
I'm actually the overseer to keep a record for all the phone, emails, anything that has to do with inmate communications to and from.
Okay, you have a duty, obviously, to keep that communication. Why is that?
Because we use it in hearings just as this in the future, so we keep all of them.
And as far as the facility is concerned, you have to monitor inmates' communication because the safety concerns as well?
That's correct.
Okay. May I approach?
Certainly.
You recognize the exhibit I'm handing you, it's Exhibit 344.
Yes, I do.
What is that?
It's a CD of one jail call that was made through our secure phone system.
Okay.
11/23/17.
And is that the inmate, an inmate, Ronnie Gaul?
Yes.
And was that his first phone call that he made once coming into custody?
Yes.
We move this in as 344 and ask to publish.
Any objection? No. Let it be received and delivered.
Okay. I'm also handing you, if you could read through those and tell me what that is.
This is a transcript of a written out version of what was said during that phone call. Okay. Same phone call, 11/23/16.
And you've listened to the phone call?
I have, sir.
And that transcript is accurate?
It is. Yes, sir.
We've requested the jury to follow along with the transcript, Judge.
You're welcome.
Yes, please.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, what you're going to hear is the real evidence that transcript will be provided simply for your assistance.
After the beep, please say United States.
United States.
Thank you. This call is subject to recording and monitoring. We may hear silence during the acceptance of your call. Please continue to hold. Hello, this is a free call from and inmate at Roger D. Wilson Detention Facility. This call is subject to recording and monitoring, and your location information may be collected and used by corrections and law enforcement personnel. Did you know inmate data safety solutions secure it? You may start the conversation now. Ready?
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm fine. They, I'm talking to we're coming to them, but my name won't be
Hold on, I can't hear. Hold on.
Can you hear me?
I can't know. What's going on?
I don't know if you guys know that,
Yeah.
well, I didn't tell her in the phone that I found, forget under the bed.
Apple's good?
Yeah, I found it, and, I didn't think it would be good to turn it in, so we were gonna go get rid of it.
Did it happen?
Yeah, I'm sure it is, and I'll call her, so I had a trash bag full of clothes in the yard, so I just put it in there, so we got to the woods, we just gotta throw it away. Because they,
did you do with it before that?
What do you mean?
What was it used? Did anybody use it before that?
I haven't got it before. I'm not going to bed. I want to push it back on this.
Who took it?
What do you mean?
Who took it from Papa's car?
I don't know. I'm already in here. I should have told her that I'm about it.
I thought you said 30, Riley. You have 1 minute left.
I have 1 minute left to do it.
I know, I just heard it.
Can you guys figure out how to see if you can switch one out with the post there or something?
We'll figure it out, okay? I've got my friend Michelle Joyner's on it, she's about Watson. I've got her on it, she's gonna let me know as soon as you are down there to where I can actually set stuff for you, okay?
Okay.
I'll figure it out.
Thank you. I'm sorry again.
What?
I promise I didn't feel that.
I know you didn't. I know you didn't.
Just hurry and get me out, please.
Okay. I will do my best. I'm on it.
Okay. I'm ready to follow here.
No, nobody's okay, baby. Nobody's okay right now. But we'll figure it out, okay?
Okay.
I love you. Thank you, producer.
Prosecutor,
No question, John.
you can step down, man.
This was, yeah, actually, I do have one question, Judge. It didn't, I don't know if it came across the thing, but that phone call was on November 23rd, 2016. Is that what I'm seeing on at least the transcript?
The record shows 11:23 at 02:47 hours.
That's 2:47 in the morning?
Yes, 02:47.
Okay, thanks, sir.
We call Alan Merritt.
You were previously sworn to oath. You solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give in the hearing of this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Go ahead and state your full name for the record and introduce yourself to the jury.
Richard Allen Merritt,
And where are you employed?
the Knox County Sheriff's Office.
What do you do for the sheriff's office?
I'm currently a lieutenant supervising our property crime division.
Okay, but back in 2016, did you have a different assignment?
Yes, I was assigned to the Major Crimes Division.
As an investigator?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
And were you on duty in November of 2016 at a homicide that occurred on Cardindale Drive here in Knoxville?
Yes, sir.
You got another parts approach.
Sure.
Yeah, sir, you were assigned to the investigation of a homicide that occurred on Cardindale Drive here in Knox County?
Yes, sir.
And what time did you arrive there at the scene on Cardindale?
Sometime around 7 o'clock, I believe.
Okay, 7 a.m.?
Yes, sir.
And what did you observe when you got there?
Patrol was there, our forensics division was there, the family of the victim was there, and the victim was located in her bed, in her bedroom, deceased.
By the time you had arrived, had a suspect been identified?
No, sir.
And how long did it take you to get to the name of a suspect, a potential suspect in this case?
I interviewed the family a short period after arriving on scene, and based on statements from them, as well as other information that came in during the investigation, I was able to determine a potential suspect.
Okay. And that would be Riley Gaul?
Yes, sir, it was Riley Gaul.
At what point did you first make contact after the homicide with Riley Gaul?
Later that evening, around 11 o'clock, I believe it is, he came in for an interview.
Okay. 11 o'clock that same night?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And prior to that, had you had an opportunity to interview some of Riley's friends? Prior to him coming in and speaking to you?
Yes, sir. You have to understand there were other detectives assisting me with the case. throughout the day. And so, in fact, several people had been interviewed by the time I spoke to Mr. Gaul.
Okay.
And that information was relayed to me from those detectives.
Okay. And is that Alex McCarty and Noah Wall?
Yes.
They both had been interviewed prior to you interviewing Mr. Gaul?
Yes,
Okay. I want to bring your attention to the scene itself, though, Investigator Merritt. You obviously were there. We have seen photographs. Describe, if you will, the size of the room that Emma was in and what your investigation yielded in terms of what you thought when you went outside and observed the entry holes into the siding.
Basically, when I arrived at the scene, I was directed to the rear northeast corner of the residence where Emma Walker's bedroom was. The bedroom was small, consisted of a bed, a chest of drawers, I think a desk and some other things. So if you can imagine, there's just kind of an L shape from the window area around to the bed. Of course, it was much like any other teenager's room with various things. So Emma, of course, was deceased in the bed. I noticed that there was a fair amount of what you describe as brain matter or gray matter on the pillow beside her head. It was obvious she had a wound to the left side of her head. Of course, I immediately noticed on the wall across from her head. So if she's laying in the bed this way, you know, here, if she's laying in the bed this way, this would be the back of the house, the wall here. So I noticed there's a wound in the side of her head above her ear. And I noticed there's a hole in the wall directly across from her head. I also noticed the pillow beside her head had damage to it, as if something had penetrated in one side of the pillow and out the other. I continued to work through the crime scene, looking for evidence. I determined that there was actually a second bullet hole in the end wall of the house. So again, she's laying in bed this way. This wall here would be the back of the house. This wall behind her head would be the end wall of the house. There was a second bullet wound, or I'm sorry, a second bullet hole in that wall, directly behind and in line with Emma Walker's head and body. At that time, of course, we took photographs. The scene was photographed. And I began to go outside of the residence because I wanted to see, you know, obviously there's holes in the wall. I wanted to see the outside where those walls came into the home. So myself and the crime scene technician walked out to the back side of the residence. We exited, I believe, through the front door, walked around the opposite end of the house from Emma's bedroom, through the gate. Gate was not locked. Walked through the gate into the backyard. As we approached the exterior of Emma Walker's bedroom, I immediately noticed to my right, towards the corner of the wall, and about 11 slats up. And when I say 11 slats up, if you're familiar with vinyl siding and the lap of the siding, I counted starting at the bottom of the bottom lap all the way up until I got to the where the bullet hole was, which was in the 11th lap of vinyl siding. A couple of things I noticed from the position is that obviously the bedroom is elevated above us because of a small crawl space, if you will, below the house. Does that make sense, John? Okay, thank you. So I noticed that from being inside the residence and then coming outside the residence, I noticed that the one single window in Emma's bedroom, so if I'm looking at the back of the house, turn this way. So I'm now looking at the back of the house, the window's here in her bedroom, the end wall of the house and the corner of the house is going to be to my right. The bullet hole roughly is the 11th slat of the vinyl siding. I noticed that based on my proximity to the bedroom, the room and the bed is elevated, but the top of the mattress appears to be in line with the bottom of the windowsill, which strikes me as an investigator because it's easier to determine the proximity of a person within the home if you can relate it to certain physical attributes or objects inside or outside of the residence. So, can I step down and kind of explain how?
Sure. We step down to the orientation of the hole on the outside of the building.
I think it would explain what you're there to understand. Can everybody sit there, okay? So let's imagine, if we will, that this is the corner of the Walker residence at 6802 Cardinal. We're standing in the backyard looking at the back of the residence outside of Emma Walker's bedroom. There's going to be a window here to the left, which is almost in the opposing corner of her bedroom. I noticed, being in the residence and coming outside of the residence, that the bottom of the windowsill appears to be almost identical in height to the top of her mattress. So if I'm standing outside the residence and I look and I see this window, and I have intimate knowledge of the residence, in other words, I've been inside, which I have been, and so I'm able to stand outside and determine that the bottom of this windowsill is in line with the top of her mattress. If I also, in fact, have intimate knowledge that Emma Walker sleeps on pillows, actually 3 to be exact, then her head's going to be in an elevated position. Does everybody follow me on that so far? So, if in fact I am standing in the back of the residence and I decide I want to shoot into this residence with the purpose of inflicting serious bodily injury, I would aim where the body is, which is exactly where the bullet hole is. That was the thing that struck me about the actual entrance of the bullet into the residence, is it was in a direct location or orientation where Emma Walker's head would be inside the residence. Again, based on intimate knowledge of the residence and where the pillows would allow her head to be.
And what about the height of the actual entry in terms of your arm length as standing outside and orienting yourself?
Obviously, I'm a short person, but I noticed also that the bullet hole would be consistent with if someone standing outside the residence raised a gun of some type and fired around, it was consistent. It wasn't low, it wasn't high, but yet it was consistent with someone raising a weapon and firing around into the back of the residence where they had determined her head would be.
Let me ask you this, Detective Merritt. You fire a Glock?
Yes, sir, I have.
You carry a Glock pistol with you?
Yes, sir, I do.
That's your service duty weapon?
Yes, sir.
Is it, what caliber is it?
The sheriff's office carries .40 caliber.
Okay. And you've carried a 9 in the past?
I have not carried none.
Okay. Have you fired a 9?
I have, sir.
And Glock pistols, when the operation of a Glock ejection happens, what happens to the shell casing of a Glock, when you fire a Glock pistol?
If it ejects freely when the gun is fired, meaning it doesn't strike something around you, if it ejects freely from the weapon when it's fired, generally it goes in a back, up and back to the right of the shooter.
Okay. And as you were standing there, where the jury's already seen, obviously, placard number 3, the location of the shell casing, what did you conclude as an investigator with regard to the position of the shooter with regard to that shell casing's landing spot?
Obviously, once I determined the hole in the exterior of the residence, I then began to look for any physical evidence on the ground, which in fact we did find one spent casing, meaning that the round had been fired. So I found one spent casing in the backyard. So from that, and based on my experience as a detective and police officer firing weapons, I know that if the spent casing's here, if you will, then the shooter had to be somewhere in between that spent casing and back to the residence.
Okay. And how many feet would you say that would be away from the residence?
Roughly 4 to 5 feet, if I remember correctly. It's been a little while, but in other words, the shooter would have been 4 or 5 feet from the back corner of the residence when they fired the round, causing the round to eject back and to the right.
Okay. Before we move you over to the side, and your observations over on the side by the air conditioner, tell us, did you, at that point, did you notice anything about the fence that surrounded you in the backyard?
The fence was wood. It was a weathered fence. It's a wood privacy fence, unlike like most you see nowadays in backyards. It was wood and it was weathered. Understand it's November. it's an early November morning, so it's cold, there's frost, there's even a little bit of fog or haze that morning. Did I answer the question?
Did you notice anything with regard to the condition of the fence? Or did you inspect the fence that morning, or
I did
wait till some
not.
later day?
We looked, obviously I'm looking for physical evidence, and we looked, but at that time I did not recall seeing anything specifically, but I did later notice some scuff marks.
Okay, tell the members of the jury about that.
Okay, so if this is the corner of the residence, you have a privacy fence that comes out, 2 panels, turns and goes this way. So obviously I found a shell casing, the bullet hole, I'm walking around, I'm looking. To the right side on this panel is what appears to be some scuff marks along the, when you look at the fence, there's 3 pieces to the panel. There's support so that you nail the slats to it. The center piece appears to be like a 2x4, if you will, 2 inches by 4 inches roughly, wood that supports the center. At the edge of that wood on that fence appears to be scuff marks. So from that I was able to surmise that once the person fired this round, they then turned and ran and jumped over the fence. Why else would there be scuff marks? Shall I keep going?
Hold on just a second, Lee. Well, this does not
Yeah, you may have to.
translate very well. Just point to us where the scuff marks are.
So yeah, if obviously we're looking at the back of the house, this would be the window to Emma Walker's bedroom. The bedroom goes this way towards the corner of the residence, so roughly is going to be in this area here. The scuff marks I'm referring to are on this panel in this area right in here. If you see that right there. And you can see those marks are both vertical and horizontal, which leads me to believe that they probably caught it with the toe of the shoe and also the side of the shoe maybe as they were going over.
Okay, now take us back to the other side of the house. Did you have an opportunity to go around the house?
Obviously, based on my experience as a detective, I determined that, in fact, once the person fired the round, they turned more than likely and jumped the fence. So I go out and I go back around to the opposite side of the fence, if you will. So now the fence is here. This is the corner of the Walker residence, and the Walker's bed. And Walker's bed is positioned in this immediate corner, if you will, here. She's laying in it. So once I get to the end wall of the house, the HVAC unit's going to be here roughly, and I notice another bullet hole. And the thing about this bullet hole that also kind of got my attention was its location. Again, counting the slats up on the wall, I was able to determine that the round in the end wall struck roughly in the 11th and a half panel, so in between the 11th and 12th panel. And it was in a location that was, again, consistent with, based on intimate knowledge of the interior of the home and relating it to the corner, the person fired in a location that was consistent with where Emma Walker's head would be. So, again, after I determined the second round entered the residence in this location, I start looking for physical evidence, at which time I find a live round. In other words, it's not been fired, it's live, it's whole, and a second spent cartridge. So based on those locations, live round would have been more close to the residence, if I recall, and the spent casing would have been, again, back and to the right, related to where the hole is in the wall. So therefore, again, I was able to determine roughly, approximately where the person stood,
when they raised the weapon and fired into the house, which again was consistent with, 4 or 5 feet roughly from this end wall of the house.
And as a result of your findings there at the scene, did you cause search warrants to be executed for records?
Yes, sir, we did.
And what kinds of records did you ask for search warrants and or subpoenas for?
Trying to think what order we went in. As you can imagine, there was a lot going on that day. We did a search warrant on Mr. Gaul's vehicle. We also did search warrants on, once we obtained Emma Walker's phone from inside the residence, we got consent on that. We also, once we were able to obtain Riley Gaul's phone, we issued a search warrant for it. Also did search warrants for buckle swabs. No, I don't think we had to do search warrants on buckle swabs. Mr. Gaul consented, and I believe the family consented as well.
Okay. And when you get a search warrant on somebody's phone, what do you actually do with the phone?
The phone is, we send it to our computer crimes division, who then hook it up to a machine that basically goes in and extracts, if you will, all the information contained within that phone. And there's various forms of information, video, you need to do audio recordings, movies. I mean, basically it's a copy, if you will, of what's contained within the phone. Also along with that comes call logs, messages, associated with those. Then we can determine, based on the search warrants and the information obtained, we get latitude and longitude of where the phone may have been when a call was placed, or where the phone was at when the phone updates its data. So I mean, there's a multitude of information we get through an extraction of a cell phone.
And so the computer forensic unit provides you with an application that you can go in and look and search the phone yourself?
Yes, so they provide us with a disk with the entire report on it. It breaks that information down into different forms, messages, call logs, call history, data usage, application download. In other words, for the smartphone users, which is just about everybody nowadays, when you go, say, into that, if you're an Apple user, you would go to the Apple store and you would download a particular application for whatever it may be. Android's much similar. You go in, you download the application, and then once the application is downloaded, of course you can use it for whatever you need to, communication, to shop, whatever the case may be. That information, when you do those downloads, that information is also stored in the phone within the data and the information within that phone. It'll say when those items are downloaded and all that.
And so did you also get warrants to search and receive cell tower information on phone records to find out what towers people were hitting?
In this investigation, sir, we tried to get all the information we could.
Okay. And so AT&T, we all already heard from Ken Cookson about the official records of AT&T. Those AT&T records also include cell tower information for voice and data?
Yes, sir, they do.
Distinguish the two for the jury, if you would, what we're talking about.
So when you make a voice call, obviously it logs it in the phone under call history, so forth and so on. And again, it associates time, date, and when we obtain the records back from AT&T, it'll also give us the time, date, latitude, and longitude of the proximity of where that call or the cell tower originated the call from. Data usage, understand, in this day and age of modern technology, obviously the communication companies and application companies want to have their product work as fast and as convenient as it is. And if you remember back a few years ago when smartphones first came out, and you would go to use an app or make a call, it would take a few minutes for it to connect. So the cell phone companies, of course, boost their signal, and the other thing they do is they allow the data in that phone to communicate with the cell tower so that when you get your phone out and you hit that app now, it's instantaneous. So you don't wait, because obviously we love our phones, everybody's home these days. So again, that information is logged in a separate area. So you've got call history, call logs, and that information. Then you have data usage, which refers more to the applications and the use of applications and things of that nature. But understand, you don't have to be on the phone and using the phone for the data to connect. The cell tower and the phone are constantly, for lack of a better term, shaking hands. The cell tower is saying, hey, we recognize your phone's here. The cell phone's saying, hey, we recognize the tower's there. And they're constantly communicating, even though the phone's in your pocket.
And so did you examine the records of Riley Gaul to figure out where he was after midnight on the 21st, the 20th going into the early morning hours of the 21st, the night Emma died?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you take those data points, or rather the cell towers, from voice or data communication?
Well, that's an interesting point. There were no, during that late night, early morning hours, there was no voice communication or text communication from Mr. Gaul's phone, which when the search warrant came back to me, that in and of itself kind of stood out to me, because you have all the information prior to that night where the phone is just constantly in use. I mean, there's constantly calls and text messages and things of that nature. Then the late night, early morning, when Emma Walker was killed, there's no communication, there's no phone calls, there's no text message. Then that following morning, the phone picks back up and there's all kinds of calls and text message communication. So when the search warrant was returned to me, I remember a couple of the younger detectives saying, hey man, we're sorry you didn't get any information back on that search warrant. When in fact, that in and of itself was kind of profound to me, because all of a sudden the phone just quit working, the voice and the text did. So that's why I went into the data information, because again, keep in mind that data information is updated constantly, whether you make a call or a text. And so that's how can we go into the data to see if I can determine where in fact that phone had been. And I did pull up those points on the map.
Okay. Investigator Merritt, what I'm handing you is the mark for identification exhibit 346. You recognize that exhibit?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
These are records for AT&T regarding the data points. Again, where that phone updated late night of the 20th, early morning of the 21st.
Okay.
For Mr. Gaul's phone.
And so you have 6 different data points, 6 different points of cell tower locations that you plotted?
Yes, sir.
And you took those and actually converted the lat longs of the tower into a map?
Yes, sir. When the information is provided, again, it gives a time and a date where the originating number of that phone. And again, it provides a cell tower number and a latitude and longitude for that data communication.
We move that as exhibit 346, selected data points from Riley Gaul's phone after midnight 11:20.
Yeah, you did.
Hang on.
If you received any letters.
The next exhibit that I'm going to show you is we got marked for identification 347. Tell us what that is.
These are the specific data points that I pulled from the records to map the location of Riley Gaul's phone on that night.
Okay. And that's the 6 locations with their lat longs?
Yes, yes, sir, that's correct.
All right. Move that as 347, 6 selected locations. Summary. Finally, I am going to show you exhibits 348 and 349 and tell us what they are.
These are basically printouts of the map itself. This is how, once I generated on the computer, put it in PDF form, and then we print it out so that the jury can see it on a larger scale. But these are, these are the data points that were plotted.
Okay, and 349?
Basically, that is a zoomed in portion of the map, which zooms in on the Sturkey Hills subdivision, including also Woods End Lane, which is 2311, is where the grandparents and Riley Gaul would stay for some time, and also 4231 Plummer Road, which is Mr. Donald's residence, where Riley would also go and stay sometimes.
We move these in, it's 348, 349, ask to publish and let them explain.
Let them be received.
Okay, what I'm putting up here first is Exhibit 348. Go ahead and stand down if you would, officer, and explain to the jury what they are seeing in Exhibit 348.
Let's see. So basically, we've got a map here of this area here. You can see where the yellow is. I don't know how well the people in the back can see that, but basically these are the residents of the Walkers, the grandparents, and Plummer Road. So these particular data points, again, if you will, these are data points, not phone calls. They start with number 1 in Maryville. So we know that Riley Gaul's phone was in Maryville at point 1 down here. Here's Maryville College. At 13:56 a.m. on the 21st. That's roughly 14 minutes after midnight.
And to be clear, this isn't where necessarily showing the jury where somebody is, correct?
Correct. You have to understand, I cleaned this up because there's a lot of data points, because again, that phone's constantly updated from different cell towers, and it does that again so that the phone works more efficiently, quicker, and better, and faster. So I pulled specific points because if I populated this map with all the points that phone connected as it's traveling, you wouldn't be able to tell anything. It would overpopulate the map and it would just look like a big old blur. You can see how just these points alone here, they start to get on top of each other. So if you can imagine, if I populate this entire map going to and from Maryville to Cardindale and back, it would just confuse you. I mean, it would overpopulate the map.
Okay, so where does it show Riley Gaul went from the first point that you mapped to the 6th point? That was
he goes from point 1 here at Maryville College.
what time?
At 13:56 a.m. on the 21st.
So that's what time?
13 minutes and 56 seconds after midnight.
Okay.
He then travels to, at 12:29 a.m., he makes this is actually a phone call that was made. I believe this is when he calls his mother and asks if grandfather's found the gun yet. So this one actually, I misspoke, this one actually is, as I recall, a phone call.
Okay, what about Noah Walton?
He also calls Noah Walton and asks Noah Walton about, I believe that's the call where he asked how to get fingerprints off a gun.
Okay.
So again, during that time roughly, his phone is here at point 2. It then goes to point 3 at 12:34 a.m., which is over close to the vicinity of Plummer Lane. From point 3, it goes to point 4 at 1:40 in the morning, 1:40 a.m. Goes to point 4. Then from here, it goes over to point 5 on the 21st at 3:45 a.m. And from point 5, it travels back point 6, Maryville College, on the 21st at 4:19 a.m.
Okay, so this exhibit tells us he's in Knoxville from at least 12:29 to 3:45?
Yes.
Okay, and if we go move to the next exhibit, let's put that up there, that's going to be exhibit number, and just explain that.
So again, if you will, you've got this area here, and this basically is a zoomed in map of that area. You'll notice point 3 here, which is consistent with point 3 here, and point 5, which is consistent with point 5 here. So basically, this is a zoomed in map of the Cardindale address, 6802 Cardindale, 2311 Woods Inn, where grandparents live, 4231 Plummer Road, where Seth Donlin, stepfather lives. And again, on the 21st at 12:40 a.m., 40 minutes after midnight, you notice that the phone is here in this area. And then at 3:45 a.m., it's over in this area, which is, obviously this is in close proximity to the interstate. So it goes from point 5 to point 6 back from there.
Just for a frame of reference, sir, I may approach you. I'm going to hand you what's been marked Exhibit 357, 337, 338, 339, 340, 341, and 342, and tell us what are those maps of?
Okay, these 337 is a map of the location on Applebee's on Central Avenue, which is earlier testimony was given after the Central football game, just where a lot of children congregate and hang out after the game. So that's the location. It starts at Applebee's on Central, and it's a route to 6802 Cardindale Drive, which, based on the route Mr. Gaul explained to me, he took the day of the Man in Black incident. This would be consistent with a route from Applebee's to the residence.
Okay, and that's 337 and 338?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And given that route, this is the actual route that he told you he took?
Yeah, he explained to me in the interview that, he explained to me in his interview that when he left his stepfather's residence on Plummer Lane, that he drove his vehicle down Dutch Valley, across Merchants Road to Central Avenue, passing Applebee's. I think that at some point in the conversation between he and Emma, he even says he's passing Applebee's. He then tells me that he proceeds down Central Avenue, turns right onto Dry Gap Pike, takes Dry Gap Pike past Steeplechase Apartments, winds around and then takes a side road. I think he described it as a one-lane bridge, which is Jim's Turkey Road. Took Jim's Turkey then to Paxton, which is one way to get into the Sturkey Hills subdivision, and then left on Gardendale.
Okay, we'll move those in as 337, 338, Applebee's to Cardindale, Google Maps, directions.
Nothing you see.
Go ahead and the next map, tell us what it is. Tell us the exhibit number and what it is.
339 is 1813 Longcrest Drive, which is the residence of Old Walton, where he resides. And it is a route mapped from Longcrest Drive, 1813 Longcrest to 6802 Cardindale Drive.
And what's the distance Google estimates to drive from Longcrest to Cardindale?
Basically, it's 9 minutes.
Is that consistent with, and what's the mileage?
About 3.5 miles.
Next, we move that in as Longcrest to Cardindale, exhibit 339, 3.6 miles.
340, exhibit 340 is 4231 Plummer Road to Cardindale. It maps that route as well, and it is roughly a 9 to 10 minute route, 3.5 to 4 miles.
We move that in as Plummer to Cardindale, 3.7 miles.
Exhibit 340
Go ahead.
Exhibit 341 is a map of 2311 Woods End Lane, grandparents' residence, 26802 Carterville, Walker's residence. And this route mapped out roughly is 3 miles. It takes about 8 to 9 minutes.
And then it's 341, distance 3 miles from Woods End and Carbondale.
Exhibit 342 is a map routing from Maryville College to 2311 Woods End Lane. This, depending on the route, it's roughly 24 miles, takes about 36 minutes.
And then it is 342 Maryville College to Woods End Lane, distance. You mentioned during your review of the maps that these residences all obviously now we see are less than or around 3.5 miles from one another.
Sure, yes.
And you also mentioned that call at 12:29. You mentioned that there was also that you discovered in your review of the records that he had texted his mother around that time.
Yes, sir.
And what did he say to his mother?
Something to the effect, did Grandpa find his gun yet? Has Grandpa found his gun yet?
You also mentioned that you conducted those forensic examinations. You have the UFED reports, or rather the Celebrate. Is that the name of the company that?
Yes, sir.
does the reports?
Yeah, the Celebrite's what they refer to as the actual computer that does the download of the information from the phone.
Okay. So at some point, when you received all of this information, you received information that Emma Walker on Friday night had received anonymous phone calls from a number she didn't recognize?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
What did you do as a result of that information?
First thing I did was took the phone number and put the phone number into the computer to see where that phone number came back to, and it came back to Alabama, which really made no sense. So I further started to find out who the carrier of that number was. In other words, your phone number is assigned to a carrier, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, so forth and so on. So I had to determine who basically owned that number so that I could serve them with a search warrant to obtain information about that.
Okay, and how did you find out who it belonged to?
When you, there's a couple of different ways, but actually, when you put it into the computer, a lot of times it'll tell you who the carrier is. So we determined through my investigation that this number is a number that was owned by one company, sold to another, and the end user of that number, in fact, was a company called Appsverse, which has an app that you can download on your smartphone. It's called Phoner, P-H-O-N-E-R.
Okay. And did you also determine whether or not that same phone number, excuse me, or same app had also called Noah Walton's phone?
Yes, sir.
May I approach? Sir. What I'm handing you has been marked for identification as 343. Do you recognize that document?
I do. This is basically it's a printout of from the Apple Store. You go to the iPhone users, you go to the Apple Store and you look up the Phoner app. Basically, this is how it appears in the Apple Store, if y'all can see that.
Okay.
And so this is what the app would look like on the phone, the button you push on the phone. And the other thing that struck me was the actual number that contacted Emma Walker is right there in her advertisement. It's the same number. It's consistent with an exact number of the one that contacted Emma Walker.
Go ahead and circle that where you're being, and go ahead and sign that on there. And so in the advertisement for the Phoner app is the exact phone number that was being used?
Yes, sir.
To contact both Noah and?
Yes, sir.
What did you do as a result of finding out that Appsverse was the app that was used?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
What did you do when you now that you're armed with this information that Appsverse Phoner was an app that was contacting her phone, what did you do as a
Basically, obtain the search warrant, send it off to apps first to obtain the information, hopefully to determine who had downloaded it, used it, so forth and so on. I also went into the phone download of Riley Gaul to see if in fact he had downloaded that particular app.
Okay. And what did you discover about the app being on it, whether or not apps or his phone was on his phone?
Once I went into the information, I did determine, in fact, that he had downloaded the app's first app, the phone or app, if you will.
Okay, what I'm handing you is the mark for identification is 345. Do you recognize that?
Yes, sir, these are the downloads, the application and data information related to applications from Mr. Gaul's phone.
Okay, what do you see being downloaded at 11, what is this, Pin Country, what is that?
On 11/18/2016, at 11/19/05, the app, phoner from Appsburst, phoner app was downloaded at 11/19/05 on the 18th. There's also an entry prior to that, 11/18, where basically he searched and found the app, and then the pink entry would be where the download is complete.
And those are log entries from Riley Gaul's phone?
Yes, please.
We move that in as 345, as use of the phone or app. Sign that as well. Judge, if we could move in 343, which is the advertisement for phoner, second phone number, block anonymous fake call app. Apps first. Did you have an opportunity also to review text information and communication inside the defendant's phone?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you discover anything about the defendant's ability to scale the fence in the backyard based on your review?
That was one bit of information I was able to obtain through a text message between Riley Gaul and Emma Walker.
Okay. What did Riley Gaul say in his text communication with Emma with regard to the ease, or rather being able to jump that fence in the backyard?
Basically, if I remember correctly, there was a conversation between Emma and Riley where Emma was coming over to her residence late one night, and as he entered into the backyard, their dog had been let out. And of course, the dog began to bark. Based on that conversation, Riley says that he scaled the fence with ease, that he didn't think he even touched it. He went over it so easily. And that basically he was so fast that before the dog got to where he was already gone.
Okay, how about when you review the phone, the defendant's knowledge of the location of the victim's bed inside her residence? Did you discover anything in your review of his phone that would lead you to believe that he knew the location of or rather the geography inside the home?
Yes, sir. That information was obtained through witnesses as well, who had told us, the family had told us that he'd been in the house, he'd been in her bedroom. Also in the text message.
Judge, I'll object to the hearsay of what other people told you.
Well, they've already testified to that, Judge. Go tell us what you saw on the phone that led you to believe that he knew.
In the text messages, conversations between Riley and Emma, there were several entries where he had talked about being in the residence or coming to the residence, going into the backyard, even sneaking in Emma Walker's bedroom window.
Detective Merritt, you did also, at our request, research some video game play?
Yes, sir, I did. I've played video games in the past. Refresh my memory.
What is a wall bang? W-A-L-L-B-A-N-G.
Wall banging refers to, it's common speak or you have to understand inside the gaming realm. younger people have their own language and use terms and words to describe certain things. Wall banging refers to, in a first-person shooter game, it refers to actually shooting through a wall to, in fact, kill the enemy or the adversary on the other side.
Okay, so in Call of Duty, is wall banging allowed and is that part of?
I'll object to the relevance of this testimony about Call of Duty.
There has been other testimony.
You heard the testimony that Riley Gaul's favorite game is Call of Duty, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And is the concept of wall banging done in Call of Duty?
Yes, sir, it is.
Just like in real life?
A leading,
It's just a thing.
And so upon all of your review and investigation, Detective Merritt, you eventually were able to locate Riley Gaul,
I did.
and he came down to this building,
He did.
to the L3 level of the building?
Yes, it's the sheriff's office detective division is located in this building on level L3. That's where the entire detective division is located, as well as the forensics division is located on the other end. He came down that night, and I was able to interview.
Okay. And that interview took place in a recorded interview room,
It did.
a videotaped?
Yes, sir, video analysis.
Okay, and who conducted that interview?
Myself, and I was assisted by Detective James Hurst.
Okay. And how long did that interview take?
Roughly just shy of 2 hours. I think it's about an hour and 50 minutes.
Okay. And did you question him about his involvement in this case?
I did.
Okay. You want me to continue, Judge? It's an hour and 50-minute limit.
Let's go ahead and start.
Okay. What I'm handing you has been marked for identification, exhibit number 350. You recognize that exhibit?
Yes, sir, that's the interview on the 21st between myself, Riley Gaul, James.
That's the video of it.
It's the audio interview, it's the entire interview.
We move this in a statement of defendant Riley Gaul, and
It will be received.
Mr. Merritt, you take a look at what you've got in front of you and tell us what that is.
This is a transcription of the interview. I requested, once the interview was complete, I requested that a transcription be done, much like yourself, it just assists in determining what exactly said and throughout the interview.
And you've, of course, reviewed that, and that is accurate as to what you believe was stated by both yourself, Detective Hurst.
Yes, sir, it's as accurate as can be. Obviously, there's some times and points throughout the interview where sometimes the conversation's inaudible. It's clear to mark, but yes, sir, this is an accurate transcription.
At this time, Judge, we'd like to publish the interview and ask the transcripts be disseminated to the jury. There should be 20, so one for defense counsel.
Ladies and gentlemen, the audio, video, the evidence. This is simply to assist.
You ready, Judge? Ready?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. I'm Detective Meredith, State Hers. Before we get started, I understand you're not under arrest right now. You came down this week when we dragged out you home. And we just want to talk to you about this gun that's missing from you during the day. But because you're in a secure area, I have to read your rights, okay? Because basically, if you're in a position that you can't get up and leave and get out of your home, they technically look at that in court as being in custody. But understand you're not in custody. I'm not in custody. I'm not telling you that you're in custody. Just have you ever had your rights read to you before? Kind of like to see them to you. So I'll go over these as I read them to you. If there's something I get to that you don't understand, then I'll tell you I'm just telling you what it is to explain it to you. I'm trying to dumb it down. You're in college, I understand, so I see your medical sweatshirt on. So what's the highest level of education that you have completed? 12th grade. And what was that? Central High School. I'm on calls, so I'll get against it. Can you read or write? Oh, yes. I was trying to steal a question, I know, but I still wanted to ask you. So I'm going to read these one at a time. Once I get to the end of it, I'll ask you to understand the answer, yes or no. So the first one is, before we ask you any questions, you must understand your rights. Do you understand that? You have the right to remain silent. Do you understand that? Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to speak with a lawyer before we ask you any questions, and to have a lawyer present during question. You understand that? If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one will only represent you before any questioning at your request. You understand that? Number 6 is, if you decide to answer questions now without a lawyer present, you will still have the right to stop answering at any time. You also have the right to stop answering at any time until you speak with the lawyer. Do you understand that? And this last one says, I have read or had this statement of my rights read to me, and I understand what my rights are. I am willing to make a statement and answer questions. I do not want a lawyer at this time. I understand and know what I am doing. No promises or threats have been made to me, and no pressure or coercion of any kind has been used against me. You understand that? You still willing to talk to me? Okay. What I need you to do is just initial beside each text, and then I'll show us his signature or sign, just sign that for me. Yes, just nervous habit, and I mean, I find myself like the hangnails and don't even know why. It's just a habit. Why? It's all turning out time. Should we go over? I need to maybe get something. Following on him, tell me a little bit about yourself. I know obviously you played football at Marion College. I'm assuming you played football in high school.
Yes, full position. Obviously, you're cornerback, trying to get your guy in line.
Must be pretty good. Yeah, I can appreciate that. Did you set any records, hold any records, and like that?
I have set all-time receptions, but other than that,
Well, you did calls all over the place last year, so that's been your senior year. It's always painful with you guys, but that's all the way. What position was it over there? Right? Yeah, competition.
I started as a freshman.
So obviously with people, in the last those positions, I guess, are pretty solid. And stay at it, stay at it. And we go from I was what about you guys are talking football to young man? So I was in high school, played offensive guard, which I know you were capable with us. But I did play line guard, center, nose guard, defense field, kicked off return, not return, all that good stuff. Kind of like the always field as well. Loved it, enjoyed it. Of course, there was nothing there for short linemen, short, slow linemen, so I didn't need to go on college and play, but it's unfortunately that's the way it is sometimes. But, do you have any idea why you're here, Ryan? I know that people talk to your grandparents, your grandfather, right? That's your Jim, so he says, yes. What did they say to you? What did you have any idea what this is about?
The only thing that they told me is that you all asked me some questions about my timeline, where I've been, and about the day.
Can you, let's start there. I guess, let's start with, Friday. What, do you have classes during the day? What was your schedule school?
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I have 3 classes, and then Tuesday, Thursday, I have 2 classes.
So there's long classes and new classes?
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I have an 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. And Tuesday, Thursday, I have a 6 a.m. and an 11 a.m. And then the other class on Monday, Wednesday, Friday is a 1 p.m.
Wow. You said pretty busy bunch. Tuesday, Thursday, 6 a.m. and 11 a.m. I did a 6 a.m. class with love. I like to do that. So, let's start with Friday. You get out of class at 1 p.m. Without smart. And take your time and think through it and just let me know.
Friday, I think, pretty sure I was at my house that's not going around to class, I'm showering, play Xbox, and then around like 3 something, maybe 4, I was back to my house, my grandparents' house, the one that
When you say your house, is that what you mean, your grandparents' house? Yes. What's that there?
2311, Woods area.
So we know which address we're talking about. So that's when you're not at school, you're not at the government, is that where you stay? Just making sure. Who all is there with you?
My grandmother, grandfather, my mother, and my sister.
Is it your mother and your sister?
Yes.
And I'm back to it, because I read this statement and I'm curious and stuff. What is your full name? G-A-U-L, date of birth,
8/12/98.
so,
41085.
and you live just 2300 or 2011 Woods End, to the drive,
Land, one of those.
do you have a phone number?
Yes.
What is it?
865 356 72 73.
Do you have any?
My phone? Yeah. I don't know.
The reason I asked all the times we interview people, so that's what's funny, so all that stuff, so. So that's okay, so Friday, you had class at 1 p.m. And you went back, you going to the shower, late Xbox.
Only around, I'm not really sure what time.
That's fine, you don't have to be exact, just give me kind of a general idea.
Probably around 6 or so. I got back to my grandparents, maybe around the time. And about an hour later, I went over to my friend Noah's house and stayed there. I think I spent the night there actually.
6 to show back to grandparents, and what time you get alone?
Probably around 7-ish. Because we had the third round playoff game at home, and I didn't want to go.
What is known? Is it awful?
Yeah, it's a dairy drive next to Chicago. It's near the,
Who else that knows when you get Friday night?
it's just me and him, and then I think it was just me and him on my, I don't remember anybody else showing up.
You said you spent the night?
I'm pretty sure it is. Actually, it's involved, I guess I'm not.
And just so we know, you don't stage, right?
Yes.
What is it?
Monday and Thursday.
And then just make sure.
Yeah.
So when you said Friday, you meant this past Friday night?
Yes.
And so just you and Noah, Friday night, nobody else came over and they was hung out?
Not to my recollection.
Was there anybody else home besides you and Noah? Have you seen any family that was over?
He has a roommate. He lives in the house. He had a roommate who lives downstairs, but I think he was at work. So
What's your name's name?
it's like a long acting. Cat maybe? K-A-Z. I don't know what that's one.
So then you get up Saturday morning, what time?
Probably 9-ish, maybe. And I left to go to my stepfather's house to get some clothes. Because I've been bringing from Maryland when I went over to my grandparents' house. I don't have any clothes over there. I have them all in my door. But I don't have some in my stepfather's house, and he lives right up the street from the other.
Over there?
Yes, on the corner. I don't know the exact number though, because that's something over there. Got close from there, and the girl, she texted me.
Which one?
The one that passed away.
Okay. What's your name?
She texted me, and she was kind of acting frantic over the phone, and she said that someone was trying to get into her house. Somebody was dressed in all black, had a face mask on. She said that she saw him. She said she thought they were taking a walk in the neighborhood, and then when she passed them and going through the driveway, they put on a pair of glasses, and they started like, she said they kind of like sped up, so she went into the garage and shut the garage, and that's when I got all the stuff up there in my stepdad's house and drove all the way to her neighborhood, which is even,
Do you have, did you say she texted you that information?
She texted me, like, she was asking me to leave first, and I told her, no, what's going on, and then so she FaceTime called me, she was crying and freaking out, so I said, okay, give me a minute, I'll come down and check it out. I got down there,
What time did you have to get there?
I had no idea, I was just rushing to get there. It was before noon, I know that for sure, sometime in the morning, and I got there, I went to her backyard, made sure, I was back there checking under the doors and everything. Looked up and down the street, and then after that, she just told me to leave, so I let her mom pull up. Mom saw me there, and her parents aren't calling me, so she just saw me and told me to leave. And I was coming up to the car, I was like, I'm not here to harass her, I was just here because she told me to go. And she got out of the car, and I explained to her, she asked and told her the same thing. After that, that's when I went back over to Mills' house.
Do you have your phone with you?
I do not.
Oh, man. I'd like to see that text message from you, just so that I can get it out.
After that, I did everything. Because I don't know. I just don't want to think about it.
So you went to the backyard, checked, so you saw anything? How did you get in the backyard first?
There's off to the right side of the house, there's a gate that has no lock, and just open up the latches and open it. She just told me to go to the right side, and she said it wasn't locked, so I went in and just checked everything back out.
And so then you said the mom shows up. How long have you been out before mom got there?
Maybe 5 minutes. I just looked around, looked up down the street, I was going back out to my car. She was pulling out of the driveway. That's when mom was pulling around the corner of the street. That's when she just sat off there.
I'm not familiar with plumber. You said that's where you came from, right?
Yes.
Well, my question is, if you leave plumber and go to Emma's house, roughly how long did that take you?
Probably, at the speed I was going, 10 minutes, because she sounded kind of, if you go, where Hooters is on Merchants? It's that long road that connects all the way to this route. Yeah, plumber connects to the other. And if you go straight to the bottom, you go to Steve Machines, and it takes you straight to the middle, straight deals.
So you come out plumber, you go down
That's right.
with Central?
Yes, my Hooters.
Yeah.
And then go straight across next to Applebee's, and then just the apartment complex.
Steeple Chase,
We turn right there,
drive in,
and it'll lead you down, and there's a little one-way bridge off to the left, and I take you from the street. And I will get from my house to there, and probably out.
say it again now, you lost me. From coming down the drive, yeah?
If you're coming down Drive, and you're going,
You get those, there's some little sharp turns when they gas up on the hill.
yes, off to the left, and if you keep going, and you turn one more time, there's a big church.
Yes, sir.
Well, the road keeps going straight, and there's a little cutoff. There's a little road that veers off.
Right there, as you come out of the turns before you go around, that's not the government, that's the one bridge. It's a person's name. Okay. I mean, I forgot about that road. That wasn't handy, so you go down, there's like a big barn and stuff around there.
Yeah, it goes into this, that's how you get into the neighborhood.
And then from there, you turn on to,
If you keep following that road, it veers off, and then you'll come to, you can go right, you can go left, you can straight, you go right, then you take the next left, and then you go around and around to the left.
does that bring you out of the swimming pool? I'm familiar with that neighborhood yet.
The swimming pool would be, if you take that first right, you keep going straight, that's where the swimming pool is. But if you take the right and then the first left, that's where it goes to her house.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Okay. So it's about 10 minutes to get there?
Probably.
Yeah, like I said, the way you're driving fast, because you won't get your head around all that, I get it. So mom shows up, you leave, where'd you go from there?
Went back back to Mel's house, and I spent a majority of the day there. I went home, I think around 7 or so, because I need a shower and eat. And then after that,
It said you go to Mel's house, and you stay there till 9?
about 7, I believe, around there.
And what do you do at work?
My grandparents, so I shower and eat.
What was your friend?
He just made me my grandpa made me 2 sandwiches and some chips. It's 9 o'clock. And I'm trying, I can't remember if I stayed at Mel's again or if I stayed at mine.
So after you get there and eat, this would be Saturday afternoon, Saturday night.
I ate it, I can make the food and put it in Ziploc bags, and straight back to Mel's house, and I eat there. But I can't remember if I spent the night there or if I went back to my grandparents. I want to say I stayed not there, I would think I did, but I don't really remember.
So that's Saturday night. You can't remember if you stayed out on Saturday night or stayed with your grandparents?
Yes. I would like to say I did stay the night because I wouldn't just go back over there at night and go right back. I'm pretty sure I did stay the night. But don't really remember.
Okay. What time do you think you got to Noah's?
Saturday night? It was dark. It was past 7, past 8 probably.
It was 7 or 8. So that Saturday night, okay, so then what time do you leave and where do you go Sunday morning? You spent the night with Noah Saturday night,
I'm pretty sure. I don't know what time I woke up, but when I woke up, I went back to my grandparents and spent pretty much, I was there from whatever time I got there, so about 4:45.
So you let Noah's Saturday morning? Yes. They went to grandparents on what time?
Whatever time I woke up, he was probably like around 10 or 11. And I stayed at my grandparents until about 4:30-ish, 5-ish, and then went back over to Mel's house for the remainder of the night. Well, not the remainder, but until about 11. I left his house at 11 last night.
Okay, back in. So you wake Noah's, and you wake up this week, Sunday morning. And I'm trying to make sure I got facts here, so just if I say something wrong, please correct me, I don't make me mad or anything like that. So you wake up at Noah's, and you go to your grandparents, and you think you get to your grandparents around 10 or 11? Sunday morning.
And I left their house around 4:45, 5-ish, around that area. Went back to Mel's house and hung out there until 11. I did go back to my grandparents to eat food at one point. It was probably like around 7-ish, but it was just a quick stop.
So between and grandparents and Noah's you got to? Oh, you went to Noah's and then went back and got to? Yeah, that's right. Couple of it. Back to Noah's, also, you said about 7, she went back to grandparents? Yes. Because I need to get food, and I also need to borrow my grandmother's laptop to help her. I've been asking Emma to talk to me for a couple of days, and she just kept walking me upstairs, so I was just kind of but she said if I would help her write her paper, she would talk to me. So I borrowed my grandmother's laptop, helped her write her paper, and she said that I couldn't call from my phone because her mom would have taken her phone and blocked my number, so she said I had to call from my friend's phone. When I left Noah's house at 11, because I told her I was going to be back on campus around 11:30, just to see if you would. And I got back to campus around 11:30, 11:45, and I used one of my friend's phones on campus to call her. You know what friend that was? Yes, it's Mac, M-A-C. Steagle, S-E-A-G-L-E. And, I'm sorry, around what time was that? 11:45. So you left Knowles around till 11? Yes. 11:30, you went back to campus until around 11:45. Emma wanted you to call her, but not from your phone, so you borrowed Mac Siegel's phone? Yes. And you just on to call him around 11:45 when you got back? Yes. Do you know Mac's number? No, I'm talking about it. Is it in your phone? Yes. Okay. So this is, and refresh my memory here, we're now into Sunday AM. Just wait, Sunday night almost Monday. So when you say you left Noah's around 11, that's 11 o'clock at night? And you got back to campus around 11:45, use Mac's phone, from there, our phone call didn't go very well. She just told me a bunch of cool stuff, and she blocked his number, so I was probably done with that, with the phone around 12, and 12 o'clock, it didn't take long. From there, I told him that I needed to make this phone back. I told him I was in my dorm because I needed to do homework. I got back up to my dorm and I tried logging in onto my American college email, but I realized I couldn't because I was logging in on my grandparents, my grandmother's laptop back in Knoxville, and it was late, almost 12:30, 12:15 or 12:30 around there. So I didn't think they were awake, so I drove back to Knoxville because I need to do my homework. I walked myself out of the laptop at my grandparents' house. My grandfather was awake. So you went back again, so Tom knows a little bit with you. You went back to the dorm from there? Back to my room, yes. Where were you before? I was in the parking lot of my store, which is 2 dorms away from mine. So this is Sunday night? Yes, almost Sunday night. Gotcha. It's around 12:30. I went back to my dorm room 12:14, and that's when I realized I couldn't do my homework because I wasn't walking out of my grandmother's laptop. And that's when I headed back to Knoxville. What time did you go to your grandparents? Like 12:30, like 12:35.
and my grandfather was away. He saw me one day, I saw him, and from there I left. I ended up not making any of my homework. Instead, I got back to campus around 1 a.m. and just sat in my car for about 2.5 hours, and just left over.
You know, that campus is your whole time?
1:15.
Sat home for 2 hours?
2 or 3. I remember being back in my dorm at 4:30 from my room being awake, because he asked me why I was getting so late.
And so you went back in your dorm room?
At around 4:30, I sat in the parking lot in front of the athletic center where my car got searched earlier, the same spot. I just sat there for about 2 or 3 hours and just left, just looking at pictures of us and stuff like that. I sent her a text to at 12:55. Just the last text that I decided I was going to say her because she obviously wasn't going to take it back.
What did you say?
Verbatim, no, but
Did you say that?
I just told her how much I loved her and that I was sorry that she didn't want what we had anymore. I hope that she was going to do great things in the future. And I thought I was going to be pretty much it. And that's when I fell asleep and so I woke up to people calling about what had happened.
Who comes?
A bunch of different people.
You know who comes first?
Who? Blazing. Blazing.
What did you say?
Well, first he texted me, and he was like, hey, I'm sorry about what happened. So I was like, what are you talking about? And he called me after that, and he said, did you not hear what happened? And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, they found him dead or unresponsive is what he told me. And that's when I started freaking out, kind of breakdown. So my parents, or my mom and my grandmother were coming out to campus together.
So they came to campus.
They probably got there around 9:30, somewhere around there.
Did you go straight back to the rest?
No, we stayed there, I don't know how long, because I was waiting on one of my coaches that wanted to come talk to me about what happened.
So what time did you leave campus?
I had no idea, probably 10 something, maybe. I really don't know. I wasn't keeping track of time at all.
I understand. So then, once your grandparents got you, you went back to their house?
My mom and my grandmother did it.
They got you, that's where you went?
But after I spent all day with my grandmother.
Until,
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk how you said she was, how'd you say that? You said college, she said some cruel lines or something?
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that?
I was crying, and I was trying to get her to reason with me on being negative with me, and she just kept saying no. She said she didn't care about the relationship anymore. She said she cared about me, she loved me, but she didn't care to be with me anymore. And I just kept begging her and begging her to just hear me out. And I just kept calling her back because I was freaking out and I was unheard. And she answered one time after she hung up and she told me about all her and she was involved. Kept calling her. She answered me and she said, "You need to stop, you're crazy, you need to get alive." I was from blogging. From there, that's when I'm back to it was fun.
So all that was on Mike's phone, Mike's seal? Yes. As he was still in church college?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about your relationship with them. When did y'all start dating?
My senior year in high school.
Did y'all date steady or?
We dated for you want specific or just one kind of just
just in general,
we dated on and off for about 2 years until about 2 weeks ago was when she really cut it off. I cut it off in the past before, she cut it off before. Just kind of back and forth. It would be months at a time and we have a small fallout and then we get back together.
So, you said you dated off for about 2 years, but you all broken up 2 weeks ago? So what you said?
About 2, maybe 3. I don't know, this one night, she just thought she called me a lie when she didn't, and she wouldn't listen to me, so she wanted everything that I
So she broke up?
Yeah.
Council, please approach.
How would you?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a long time now. So we're going to go ahead and break, and we'll go ahead and break for lunch, and we'll start back here at 1 o'clock.
Just leave all your stuff.
All right, start back at 1 o'clock.
Thank you.